Well, this looks like a job for me. Gonna talk about Modern Horizons 3. That's all I got. There's my intro.
Talk about the set here with my bro.
Hey.
Now please go ahead and roll the intro.
Go ahead and hit follow. We are back.
I never left, but here we are.
I've made it through all of my nightmarish travel delays and missing every single podcast record. But let me tell you what, it feels great to be sitting back in this seat again, talking to you about the best game on the planet. That is Magic the Gathering, and we are the MTG Thoughtcast. My name is Joseph. I'm one of your hosts here. You're watching the MTG Thoughtcast channel. John, what are we talking about today? We got a nice easy one, nice easy breezy one.
We're back in the saddle with some more Modern Horizons 3, baby.
Yes, sir. I don't know if you noticed, but this was kind of a weird spoiler season. Most of the set got leaked and was actively leaking while spoilers were happening. So there was a ton of little spicy spoilers that got slipped through the cracks. So we wanted to take a second today to talk about cards that I definitely missed and you might have missed from Modern Horizons 3. But before we dive into that, if you want to see more of this content and want to see our beautiful faces on your feed more often, totally free way to support us is to, that gorgeous beard, John. A really easy way to do that is to drop likes, follows, and comments down below. We love responding to all the comments that we get. We even have a video that just came out just responding to a comment. So we love that kind of stuff. We love the interaction. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, if you're one of our preferred audio-only listeners, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us out, gets us on more front pages. And if you really want to go the extra mile and you want direct access to me, John, and Jared, and all of the friends of the MTG Thoughtcast, you can you can join our Discord. Down below, linked in all of the bios. We have a ton of fun there. We do a lot of spell table games. We help each other out building decks. It's a really, really good time. I'm in there literally every day. So if you want to talk to me every day, join the Discord. All right, now that all of the self-promo is out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into today's topics. Like I said, we're talking about some Modern Horizons 3 cards that you might have missed from spoiler season. John, do you want to kick us off with a card that you're excited about?
Sure thing. I guess is worth prefacing maybe out of this though, just in case anyone might be confusing this with anything else that's from the set. This is talking about the main booster set itself.
Yes, main set. Modern Horizons 3.
Because the commander cards were also being leaked out at the same time, since all that stuff was openable from like collector boosters. I know that's like where a majority of where these like Facebook whatnot things all came from, right?
From whatnot. I think there's about to be some sweeping change on how whatnot works, because what these sellers are doing is they're getting product in early and then they're quote unquote pre-saling it, but then they're just ripping the packs on stream and then not shipping the cards out until the set release. So they're not doing anything, as far as I know, that's outside of the bounds of what Wizards' terms is with them. But I feel like a change will be coming soon, because this was a huge leak. It was basically the entire set got leaked almost before spoiler season started.
Yeah, I know, at least, like, again, maybe back to the commander thing real quick. I know for certain that all of the brand new rares from the commander decks were shown before any of the commander decks were ever previewed.
Yeah. Super strange. But like I said, weird one. Lots of cards were easy to miss. Take us away, John. Show us a card.
We have gone through the main booster set itself, and obviously this set is absolutely jam-packed with obviously things for Modern itself, but like all sorts of constructed formats.
It's sort of for Modern.
brand new hits into Modern, both as like brand new card designs that are in this set itself, plus like a very interesting collection of reprint cards that are thrown in here that are first time brand new into Modern, that then also make like some spicy good pickups for us as Commander people, right? So like, like there's just freaking there's like just Crick, son of Yawgmoth in the reprints as well.
Yeah,
so like if you've ever,
if you pretty crazy.
Yeah, if you've ever wanted to play Crick, he's just here. Reprints stuff like Recruiter of the Guard and Estrid's Invocation and Ophiomancer, Toxic Deluge, Sylvan Safekeeper. So like there's a lot of really, really great things in here for us as Commander people.
Yeah, just go back and read through the reprint list at some point. This is to the listener. Go back and read through it at some point. It's pretty crazy.
And then fantastic, great new, brand new card designs that could slot directly into a lot of existing strategies we already have throughout the course of the game. So one of the first ones I'll start with here is one of these lower uncommon ones. This is actually a card that we talked about, myself and Jared, when we were talking about the Commander decks. It could be one of the backbone combo pieces that you would do to win out a game with any Eldrazi builds. But I'd like to talk about this in a sense of like going into any just colorless, just in general. Glaring Flesh Raker. Glaring Flesh
card.
Yeah, Glaring Flesh Raker is 2 and a colorless mana. For anybody who may not remember this, the colorless mana symbol in the casting cost of a card means that you need to have a colorless source specifically to cast that spell. 2/2 Eldrazi Drone. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you make a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn. Eldrazi spawns have the ability to sacrifice and make a colorless mana.
There's 0/1 tokens.
Yeah. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under your control, Flesh Raker deals 1 damage to each opponent. Does that sound familiar to anybody else?
Unbelievable, dude. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, if you're thinking Impact Tremors immediately off the gate, you're correct.
Yes. Impact Tremors in a colorless card for colorless creatures. And like, it doesn't require you to cast an Eldrazi spell to make an Eldrazi spawn. It's just colorless spells. So like, you play a Talisman and you get another piece of ramp along with it that Impact Tremors the table for 1.
Mm-hmm. If your colorless spell is a creature, then fantastic. That creature enters in Impact Tremors and then the spawn Impact Tremors as well.
Let alone, like, if you're playing this in the Ulalek precon, like, oh my god. Because Ulalek copies all of the spells and triggers on the stack. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you can play Ulalek and then play Glaring Flesh Raker, copy it so that you now have 2 Flesh Rakers out, all of a sudden, every colorless spell you cast gets you 4 Eldrazi spawns. And then
that is something you can do out of the precon. Yeah, Flesh Raker comes in that precon.
Yes, it's ridiculous. This is a ridiculous card for an uncommon.
And just insane. Again, even outside of Eldrazi, if you are playing a artifact centric deck, right? If your goal is getting down as many artifact things as possible, like you said, this only cares about colorless spell. You 100%. play a ramp spell, this comes with a little ramp dork. And even if you're not using it as ramp, here's a chump blocker.
You could play this in like an Alayla deck that's just looking to spam a bunch of really cheap artifacts and then just get an extra token, an extra piece of ramp.
Oh, I was thinking about this for Psy, Master Thopterist. Every artifact already comes with a Thopter, so then that's a Thopter, and then him, and then the creature you're casting. That's 3 damage potentially around the board just for casting a spell.
Yeah. Are you going to try this out in your Campbell deck?
I don't know, because there's not as much colorless in Campbell.
Yeah.
But definitely Psy. I think I want to get one of these for Psy.
Yeah. So neat.
Brea is also a reprint that comes in this main set as well. So if anybody looking to pick up Brea and start making like Brea 4-color artifacts, Flesh Raker will be a fantastic pickup for that.
If anybody's looking to lose every single one of your friends by building Brea, that is a combo machine.
All right, hit me, Joseph.
That's crazy. I'm gonna take us in a slightly different direction. This is the only rare that I'm going to be talking about today. So you know that I'm a dirty reanimator player. The first, you just get 1 hit of reanimation, and then all of a sudden you look up and you have 4 graveyard decks. It just happens. It's just a natural cycle of being a Magic player. And the joke is that like we Reanimator players are already like one step away from playing one with nothing just to discard our hands. So as soon as I saw Psychic Frog, it's a blue and a black for a 1/2 frog that whenever it deals damage to a player or planeswalker, you draw a card. You can just discard a card to put a +1/+1 counter on it, or you can exile 3 cards from your graveyard to give it flying until end of turn. So I've gotten it's so many abilities on one thing that are all just really easy to trigger. So if you really wanted to, you could just play this and dump your hand, incidentally giving it a bunch of +1/+1 counters. So Psychic Frog is already going to be this huge threat once you're discarding cards. But like I've gotten to play with this a little bit in draft, and being able to, first of all, play Victimize, which is an uncommon in the set as well, where you could play Psychic Frog on turn 2, discard 2 really big creatures, like, and then your next turn swing in for 3, draw a card, Victimize, reanimate 2 different things. The Psychic Frog is just the type of card that I'm looking for to be the glue or the oil that keeps a deck running. Every time that I've gotten to play it and sit with it for a second, I think of a new strategy that it just enables and helps out and just throws gas on the fire of. Like I said, as a Reanimator player, Psychic Frog is really exciting. But it's really easy to pass over because it's just a 2-mana 1/2. But then, oh no, you've played it and now it's a 4/5 that when it hits draws a card. So it's really good in a control shell as well, where you stick it on turn 2, and then on the following turns, you just keep playing removal spells to kind of keep clearing your way in so that all of your removal spells become 1-for-1s for yourself, where you're just drawing a card. You kill something, hit in, draw a card. It's way more powerful than it seems. And it's also a great callback to Psychic Dog. A nice callback.
All glory to the Hypnotoad.
All glory to the Hypnotoad. We love a frog. Anyway, that's Psychic Frog. You got another one?
That's a great one. Yeah. The one aspect I read about that, it sounds really cool. That seems like an awesome outlet for madness. Honestly, you get this little dude, it gets super big, and then he just gives you a free outlet for discarding cards to madness.
In the same way that we've started keeping track of, oh no, Sir Conrad is better, I think we should start a tally for, okay, here's another card that makes Psychic Frog really good.
Good stuff. All right, well, if it's back to me now, then, yeah, if you talked about a rare, I guess I'll bring one up as well. Because, like, as what we've gone through and we're deciding to do with this list here is, like, there are some, like, obviously huge highlights of this set that everyone has been talking about.
You know that Nadu is good. We don't need to harp on about how good Nadu is.
Right. Nadu is obviously proving itself to be super well. Like the Eldrazi Titans, we don't need to be talking about them today either, because obviously we know they're all super good. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And some of the other legendaries or whatever. But so talking about things that like might have gone under the radar quite a bit and like they might seem a little bit more powerful than you originally go with, I'm going to talk about Dreamtide Whale. Well, I don't know if this is good, but it's certainly funny.
It's funky.
It's 2 and a blue for a 7/5 whale. It has Vanishing 2, meaning that it comes in with 2 time counters on it, and at your upkeep, you have to remove a time counter. When the last one is removed, you have to sacrifice it. Down goes the whale. However, it has a line on it that says, whenever a player casts their second spell, proliferate.
Yep. Crazy.
So if you're already doing a very heavy counter proliferate theme in your deck in general, this could just be another piece of glue that gets triggered off of anybody doing a thing. It just as a player, it reads similarly to Ledger Shredder. That as soon as anybody, like obviously not with the card draw, but like if you can get any person to do 2 spells during a turn, you get to do some kind of benefit in that regard. This plays really, really well with Ledger Shredder as a side. Because Conniving will put counters on the Shredder, and then the Tide Whale will proliferate. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I never think about proliferating +1/+1 counters because it's always just used for degenerate things.
Right. Like, Any kind of deck where you can capitalize, at least yourself anyway, if you can get at least 2 spells during a turn, set yourself up some kind of synergy of some kind that you're casting at least one thing for free during the turn, and then you're doing one during your turn regularly, or if you're playing an instant speed kind of deck where you're casting multiple spells off turn, or even then if your opponents are casting things off turn, right? That's the neat part with Commander, is that you don't necessarily have to rely on just one other person. I don't know if this is a very good constructed card per se, because it is harder in a 1v1 to reliably have your opponent always casting 2 spells, but
yeah, it also, like, in a constructed format, it dies to basically every piece of removal that you could throw at it. Like, it gets fatal pushed very easily, and that's not really where you want your 3-drop, like, enabler to land. But you're right, in Commander, like, if you're playing, like, goodness, this could even, like, enable a bit of, like, the blue-black poison proliferate thing that March of Madness was trying to do. March of Madness?
March of the Machine.
March of the Machine. March of Madness is basketball. So, there was all of those, like, prologue to Phyresis that just gives each opponent a poison counter and draws you a card. There's a bunch of removal spells that proliferate on their own. So,
this thing is great in a poison deck.
Totally. If you stick the whale, or if you have, like, a flux channeler in play as well, that's like you cast 2 spells and now you've proliferated 3 times on your turn, like, ridiculous.
This could be really good in a Planeswalker shell, honestly, as well, because it comes down cheap, is a really big body, and then as you naturally cast what you're looking to do, like, I'm actually thinking about this as for my wife's Joda deck.
100%.
Yeah, her Joda deck does a cast a Planeswalker, and it pseudo cascades into another Planeswalker. This would then trigger just off of casting 1 spell.
Oh, and this works really well with Joda.
This just works great with Cascade.
Yes.
Just in general.
Super good with Cascade. It also... What was I going to say? Oh, you would almost nearly play an enchantment that just said 3 mana whenever a player casts their second spell, proliferate. So the fact that this is on a 7/5 body that you, like, incidentally have to keep around. But if you're building around it, you're going to be keeping this whale around for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I don't think this jams into everything, but if you've got enough of a you're trying to manipulate counters sort of build, I think this would be a very interesting selection to try and consider for that deck.
Totally. Sweet. Well, that's
fast priority.
I guess since you talked about a blue card, I'll talk about a blue card as well. Again, just I'm a dirty degenerate. It's you're gonna see a theme here, but I want to talk about Tamiyo meets the Story Circle.
Oh, dude!
So it's 1 and a blue for a saga, and it is the weirdest blue saga that I've ever seen. So 2 mana. The way sagas work, they come in with a Aeon counter, lore counter on it, and then at the beginning of your after your draw step, you put a lore counter on it and do what the next chapter says. So it comes in on the first chapter and says, until your next turn, whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -2/-0 until the end of turn. So if you've ever played against a, like, Tasha deck, that is a nutty ability on its own. Just being able to, like, reduce the size of any creatures that are attacking you. So
Jace, Architect of Thought, also comes to mind.
Yeah, totally. But it doesn't even affect other players. It just incentivizes everybody to not attack you for an entire turn cycle. So if you have any way to just abuse that and just, like, remove a lore counter from it and go back to the first one so that re-triggers, that alone is a great ability. Second ability is discard any number of cards, then investigate twice for each card discarded this way. Huh? What is this?
So, do you hear that? That sounds like the stomping of Academy Manufacturer coming back into the channel, boys.
Literally. Oh, there's our other one. Put a tick on this is a ridiculous Academy Manufacturer card. And Sir Conrad, because you're discarding cards. You just discard all these creatures and just dome everybody.
Whack.
So this reads as bad because you discard your hand or discard any number of cards. You probably want to discard as many as possible to this, because what this is going to represent is later on in the game, every card you discard is going to draw you 2 cards, as long as you can get to the point where you're paying for them. So let alone if you have anything that abuses clues, like Academy Manufacturer or Forensic Gadgeteer that makes them cheaper. Like all of these things make this card's not great on its own, but as soon as you start piecing it together with other things, it starts getting ridiculous. So even
I found in playing this card in a little bit of limited as well, this is also bananas if you're looking to abuse affinity.
Oh my God, yeah. This makes so many artifacts so quickly. I mean, even you discard 2 cards and all of a sudden you have 4 clues sitting on the battlefield for 2 mana. Ridiculous. And then the third ability is
I did that in the draft. I was able to instantly use those clues as the improvise cost for Kappa Cannoneer.
Crazy. Yeah, for like turn 3 Kappa Cannoneer or something.
Yep.
Ridiculous. Let alone if you play this after Kappa Cannoneer and then get to put like 4 +1/+1 counters on it. All of a sudden it's like a 9/9. Ridiculous.
Unblockable 9/9.
Yeah, again, this one to me is just one that reads as less powerful than it actually is. So it's going to sneak under the radar for a lot of people. But again, like similar to Psychic Frog, it helps to enable reanimator strategies. Like you could discard a creature and a Dread return.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden,
do you want to bring up real quick what its third ability is, just because it is worth talking about?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Forgot that it has a third ability. The third ability is the third lore counter will trigger the ability to shuffle up to 3 target cards from your graveyard into your library.
So that is nice as a failsafe. That like even if if you want to discard cards and don't immediately have any impact for them being discarded or being in your graveyard, you do just get a small Gaia's Blessing out of the tail end of that worst case scenario. So you could do this neat thing of like maybe dump like 2 lands or whatever that aren't super helpful to you at the moment, make a bunch of clues, and then the following turn you can shuffle those or anything else that may already be in your graveyard at that point of the game.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I want to try out. I want to try this out in a Turbo Fog list. So you play it and it acts as a pseudo fog. And then you discard any cards that aren't relevant, which are going to give you extra card advantage when you just go draw pass. And then you can keep shuffling either the Tameo Meets the Story Circles back into your deck as you cast more of them, or I'm talking about constructed as well. You can shuffle those back in or shuffle fogs back in and just keep the cycle going. I have been obsessed with Turbo Fog decks since I've seen one play where you just go, all right, peace, pass to you. Fog, pass. It looks so fun. So anyway, Tameo Meets the Story Circle is going to make some impact in some decks of mine.
Love that.
Back to you, John.
Here we go. All right. Let's talk about modal spells.
Riku has entered the chat.
Oh, man. I know I've gone on record saying before that I don't think cards, especially when it comes to like instants and sorceries, unless that thing is like very narrow specific on what that card does, Commander requires basically that all of your pieces within it have flexibility over the entire course of the game, because you never know what turn of the game you are going to be drawing these pieces, right? And like
totally,
ramp is kind of an exception to that, but like you can't really be playing just disenchant is that kind of stuff is still totally fine as is, but like if you can have a kind of spell that is flexible and is scalable over the course of the game, it offers more versatility to you over the course of that game, and you have a higher likelihood of being able to participate in interaction and have responses over the collective of the game. And so speaking of collective, let's talk about this little uncommon called Collective Resistance.
Ooh.
1 and a green for an instant. It also has Escalate for a green. This means that you can pay this green cost for each mode chosen beyond the first. So this is a modal spell normally, so it has choose 1 or more between 3 modes of destroying an artifact, destroying an enchantment, or giving a target creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn.
Oh, sick. This is an instant as well?
It is an instant.
Yeah,
as well.
Dude. So at its max value, it's 1 green, destroy an artifact, an enchantment, and give something of yours hexproof and indestructible.
That's correct.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. So early game, if you are not fast, if you don't have tons of mana to sink into this right now, and something absolutely has to go right then and there, then you've got a 1 in a green. Because the thing with a card like Naturalize is you only already get to pick between one of its 2 modes that it blows up anyway, right? Naturalize just says destroy an artifact or an enchantment. So this reads no different than Naturalize, right? 1 in a green, you either destroy an artifact or destroy an enchantment. And worst case scenario, then, if you need it to, is a protection spell, a hexproof and indestructible protection spell. Late game, if things are starting to get out of hand and like a big spot removal of some kind or a board wipe of some kind is about to happen, then you've got the mana then reserved back up, which, like you described, the escalate to do this at full value is the 1 in a green to cast it, and then 2 additional green to choose any number of the modes beyond the first one. You could cast this for just 1 green if you only need 2 of the 3 modes.
Yeah. And that's such an FU if someone's trying to, especially if they're trying to like targeted remove something and you're like, that's cool. I'm actually going to counter that spell of yours and then also blow up an artifact and then also blow up an enchantment. And you've just like 3 for 1 to them. Like
fighting against the control deck, they're about to go like Hero's Downfall, your commander, whatever. It's like, I'll stop that spell by giving mine hexproof and indestructible. Let me also blow up your Soul Ring and Rhystic Study.
Literally such a blowout.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of thing that I'm looking to add to more decks. Like you said, it just strictly replaces Naturalize, which I don't play a ton of Naturalize. I feel like
people don't even really do much Naturalize anymore. Like I think one of like the gold standard, I suppose, like the biggest standard that definitely comes in pre-cons a lot right now is Return to Nature, which is already naturalized, but then also has a 3rd mode to exile somebody's graveyard. And that's still very useful, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I still wouldn't even really play that, though. I think that your artifact and enchantment hate or your graveyard hate or whatever should be largely incidental. I don't think that dedicating an entire slot to like hating on things like that is super valuable. It's why things like Reclamation Sage are really good, because you're just playing a creature that incidentally gets rid of an artifact or an enchantment. So what's great about this is I do play dedicated protection spells. So the way that I would actually read this to me is like it would take the spot of a protection spell in a green deck that has some incidental artifact and enchantment hate on top of it. So I would be looking to play this in basically every green deck as long as it could support playing green. Like maybe not a 3-color deck, but like a 2-color deck that has green in it.
Yeah, probably once you're past 3. But this is phenomenal in mono green and probably 2-color worst case scenario.
You know that Wilson's getting this.
Mm-hmm. That's what I had on that.
Sweet, dude. All right. I'm going to give you an option here. Should we talk about a damage spell? Or should we talk about a card draw spell?
We haven't really touched on much as far as card draw is concerned, so let's bring that one up.
Sweet. Let's talk about Planar Genesis. So it's green and a blue for an instant that says, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't, put a card from among them into your hand and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. They've fused Impulse and Growth Spiral into one card. This is absolutely nutty. I've been saying for a while that if you're playing Growth Spiral in a deck, which I think if you can play Growth Spiral, it's very worth playing. If you can play it, you probably should play Joint Exploration too, which is a worse version of Growth Spiral. Planar Genesis is sometimes going to be a better version of Growth Spiral. The land does come into play tapped, unlike with Growth Spiral, but it's way harder to whiff. Where sometimes Growth Spiral is just 2-mana draw a card, which is not a really good rate. Planar Genesis is almost always going to be grabbing whatever you want. So like early game, if you play this on turn 2, it's a ramp spell, like a very efficient ramp spell. Late game, it's just an impulse of look at the top 4 cards, grab whichever one of these you want. So it is going to be, if you're playing a green-blue deck, I would very much recommend putting Planar Genesis into it. I don't know how much more there is to talk about how good card advantage and ramp stapled onto one card is.
I like that it's one of these kinds of cards that like goes off the top of your library, because like sometimes those kinds of things can whiff. They don't have that little backup clause on them that if you don't meet a particular condition, you just get one of those cards into your hand. So I do like that this does this, but I don't know if this is better than Growth Spiral, because at least with Growth Spiral, it's you do always guarantee get a card out of it. And then the land that goes into play, you do get to pick that from your hand.
Right.
Genesis, you could hit a land in your top 4, but it may not be the land that you need at that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think I see this as like some purely incidental value. Like it is.
Again, it's nice that you get a card in your hand regardless, so that if you don't end up finding the land that you need, then you do just still replace itself, worst case scenario. So it is nice that it has that as a baseline, but I like the flexibility more of Growth Spiral being able to, like, if you've got the lands in your hand already, you get to pick exactly what type you need when.
Right. Yeah, it's
so there's some risk reward to playing a card like this.
Totally. It's not exactly apples to apples, but I do think that if you're playing a deck that wants to be playing Growth Spiral, you probably want Planar Genesis too.
Mm-hmm. Cantrips are cantrips, you know?
Exactly. Right.
Worst case scenario.
That's that one.
Well, how about if we're talking about some raw card draw then? Let me tell you about this little fan favorite of mine. This might be one of those ones that's maybe like borderline on my list of like, this is certainly one that people should already have seen, should have already known about, that is going to be quite the Commander All-Star. I don't know if maybe it's because of its colors. It may not be exactly the one that goes into every deck at all, but I'm real excited to tell you about Kozilek's Unsealing.
Unbelievable
Value. Again,
I had to read this one a few times just so that I fully understood what it does.
Yeah. It's a card like this that also really helps establish a point that, like, one of my favorite aspects about Modern Horizons is the in-jokes that it makes to itself and its previous sets or whatever, and how certain colors can reproduce an effect that was already an established card or an established formula previously in the game, but just kind of twisting it a little bit to be for like a slightly different color. So in the case of Kozilek's Unsealing, this is a riff off of a rare from a core set called Sarkhan's Unsealing that had a very similar like line of clause that you do a thing when you cast a creature of a particular power, and then you do that thing grandioso when you cast a creature really, really large. So this is like that, but for blue. Kozilek's Unsealing is 2 and a blue for an enchantment. The enchantment itself has Devoid as well, which is a prominent theme amongst this booster product. A lot of cards that have color, but then they're also colorless just in play or on the stacker or whatever. When you cast a creature spell with mana value 4, 5, or 6, you create 2 0/1 Eldrazi spawns. We've talked about them already before, so every creature now just comes with free ramp.
You make 2 of them.
Yeah, anything you cast between 4 and 6 just comes with free ramp, which is useful because then that helps you tie into the second ability that this enchantment does. When you cast a creature spell with mana value 7 or greater, draw 3 cards.
Hey, do you want to evoke a Null Drifter after you cast this? Turn 3, Sarkhan's Unsealing. Turn 4, evoke a Null Drifter. Draw 5.
Are you kidding me with this?
Draw 3 is stapling Ancestral Recall onto your huge threats is unbelievable.
This is obviously like a mainstay into any color-centric Eldrazi build. Obviously, put this into Ululek and it'll go ham.
Yeah, because you get to copy the trigger on the stack for all of these. Draw 6 cards.
Exactly. And yeah, just of course, just any big creature thing. This does not need to go off of colorless creatures, even though the card itself is devoid. It just cares about any kind of creature.
Yeah.
The biggest one, especially when playing with Sarkhan's Unsealing, is these are really, really great into the cards that their mana value can be flexed. So like
like Affinity, Emerge.
So yep. Or also just X cost things. So like Hydras and the other things that aren't Hydras. Again, I don't know if this is the correct, like, because card draw obviously has to be blue. So your big guy's deck needs to have blue as a backbone. But like, I'm excited for this for my Surak deck because that already is like Teamer in its base as well. But if you're doing any like big creature matters, especially like say 5-color, or maybe if you're Sultai or Teamer or anything like that. Maybe sometimes even like Jeskai can sometimes get some very high cost things. Again, Eldrazi really cares about this. Artifacts, we talked about artifact deck already before, but like there are tons of high mana value artifacts that would be very easy then to ramp into due to the Eldrazi spawn that this card makes.
Yeah.
Right?
I definitely thought that this required you to be casting colorless creatures. Nope. Again, this is why we're doing this episode, because I'm missing things as we're talking about it. Like, the joke is always reading the card explains the card. So that's what we're here to do, is to read the card for you.
It also, just as a side, does not care where the creature was cast from. So any of your cast from somewhere else shenanigans that you can do in Commander, like your command zone, or from exile, or from the graveyard, anything like that. If you have cast a creature that meets the mana value restriction or requirements of this card, I should say, you get value every time.
Crazy.
It is wacky.
Quick question for you before we go into it. How often, when you're sitting at a Commander table, is there a multicolored creature on the board?
A multicolored creature? Pretty often. Like,
most of the time, you'd say?
Worst case scenario commanders, right? People don't... Right. There's not tons of monocolor commanders people are playing anymore.
Right. Yeah, you're just not really incentivized to do it. There's a handful of them, but like it's rare to be playing against a monocolored commander.
Yeah. So generally speaking, everybody's commanders. I don't really know much about in the 99 having like multicolor creatures unless they are hyper specific to what the deck is trying to do. So
anyway, I would say most of the time there's a multicolored creature on the board. So Ghostfire Slice, thinking about that, is 2 and a red for an instant with Devoid that deals 4 damage to any target. So it's any target, including face. But this spell costs 2 less to cast if an opponent controls a multicolored permanent. Oh, a multicolored permanent. See, I'm rereading it now. So with a multicolored permanent on the board on your opponent's side, this becomes a strictly better Lightning Bolt, which I'm way into playing. I already think that Lightning Bolt is a really underrated card in Commander to begin with. I think if you're playing red, it's probably worth throwing a Lightning Bolt in there. So Ghostfire Slice being most of the time an additional Lightning Bolt that's going to be better in some cases. Like you said, most commanders these days, I would say, are multicolored and probably between 3 and 4 mana, which leaves their power and toughness somewhere around 3 or 4 for the most part. I don't know the stats on this, but I would guess that if you looked it up, most commanders are multicolored and have 3 or 4 toughness. So Ghostfire Slice being able to just snag one of those for a single mana is going to be a really big play for you. Let alone, like, there's a non-zero amount of times where somebody's sitting at 4 life and you're going to be able to just go like 1 mana, you're dead. Yeah. It's the added equity of that. I would say most of the time you're going to throw this at a creature. But every once in a while, there's just going to be a time where you get to win the game with a Ghostfire Slice, and you're going to have great.
And this obviously goes big into any of the red-based damage decks that want to be capitalizing on just dealing damage. Right? You play O'Haraxinel.
Totally, yeah. And Jared, who we haven't even mentioned, isn't here today. By the way, Jared's taking a break today. Jared plays a Toralf deck that cares about excess damage being dealt to creatures. So having something like 4 damage on one spell, being able to shoot a 1/1 token, and then you throw 3 damage somewhere else. And then, God forbid, if you have a damage doubler, this might just start the chain of Toralf wins the game by paying 1 mana for it. So really, really good card, that Ghostfire Slice. John, take us away with the last one.
Super good, super good. All right. Let's talk about a land, because while this set is filled with some variety of decent lands, right? Like if we were talking about reprint stuff earlier, this is a reprint pile of the fetch lands. So if you're ever looking for those for your commander decks, this is going to be a place to grab them. I believe I've seen like all the ones that are in this set. They are excuse me, that was almost English. They are starting to dip around like $12, $11 each or so, give or take.
Well
so
worth picking up a few.
If you were looking for any of the cons cycle of fetch lands, they are here. There's also just some bananas stupid ones like Ugin's Labyrinth, but we won't be talking about that because everybody knows that is a messed up card.
Yes.
The landscapes are also very interesting.
Yeah,
I think these are really sick. If you've got the 3 colors in the cycling availability to play one of these in your deck, a Evolving Wilds that can just be a colorless when you need it to be, and then can also cycle when you don't need them. Those are really, really cool. I'm gonna consider swapping out them for some of the Evolving Wilds that I have in some of my 3-color decks.
Yeah, I have some pretty strong opinions about Evolving Wilds, and I'm actually really glad that they're starting to sort of phase Evolving Wilds out, especially for 3-color decks. Where I think at this point in the game, you should not be playing Evolving Wilds in a 3-color deck. There's just almost no reason to. They've given us way too many good options, and it's a tapped version of one of your colors. I think even in a 2-color deck, Evolving Wilds is still a little sus because it's a tapped with one of your colors when you could literally just be playing a Guildgate or something that also comes in tapped and is 2 of your colors. So I think at this point, there's almost no reason to be playing Evolving Wilds unless you have some way to cheese them from the graveyard and you just need some budget fetches. But these become better versions of those for 3-color decks, where the ability to cycle, the ability to come in untapped and use it for mana if you need to, the ability to cycle it and draw a card late in the game if you need to, and then in a pinch, if you're absolutely desperate, you can go and find the color that you're missing. So I totally agree with you. All of these landscapes are really worth the include.
Yeah, that was our honorable mention talk about the landscapes real quick.
Yeah,
because these are super good as well. Also kind of slide into that honorable mention slot as well is all of these modal double face lands.
Yes, dude.
These are all fantastic. These are all fantastic. The monocolor ones that you can lightning bolt them in, and the new 2-color ones. If you have the correct version, we know that there's misprints out there.
Crazy. There's misprints where it's the wrong land on the backside of it.
Yep. All of these are great, honestly, right? Like you can just put these in, kind of counting them as a land slot, and just they do a thing on their front side if you need them to.
Yeah, I almost talked about Witch Enchanter. Disenchanter.
Hey,
I almost had that on my list to talk about because it's such a good ability for, like, I play a Delny Streetwise Lookout deck that is looking for more effects like Lauren of the Third Path, which is, they have the same ability on them. Witch Enchanter and Lauren of the Third Path both say effectively the same thing for the first line of text. Witch Enchanter is a 2/2 for 4 that when it enters, it Reclamation Sages, so it blows up either an artifact or an enchantment. And then on the backside is a land that taps for white that you can put in untapped for 3 life. So in like my Delany Streetwise deck, which is looking to double the triggered abilities of creatures that have power 2 or less, this is just an additional copy of Lauren of the Third Path, effectively. So I love that they're putting really useful creatures attached to really useful lands.
Yeah. And again, that's not even the land I was going to be talking about in all these. All of these is just like honorable pickups to be like, hey, if you open any of these from your packs or you plan to purchase any of these as single, these are all fantastic. Lands are obviously a very crucial backbone in making sure that your commander decks run at their full efficiency.
Totally.
But the land I would like to actually properly talk about as one of my favorites that are in this set is just a fun little guy called Urza's Cave.
Yes, dude.
Fun little Urza's Cave. Land type, Urza's Cave. Thank you for watching. Name Urza's Caves. Occupation, Urza's Cave. So this is obviously an Urza's. It's also a cave. So if you have any of the decks that care about those kind of things, here you go. Here's another one. It taps for colorless, or for 3 mana, tap it and sacrifice it. Search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle.
Yes. So non-green decks now get a crop rotation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, is it a little slow potentially? Yeah, but I think it kind of has to be for it being like colorless like this. Like you can't just have a tutor out your best land pretty much any cheaper than this on a land. But like, yeah, any color you need. If you've got something in your deck, like especially outside of green, that can't really tutor out non-basics like this prolifically, you've got anything specific that you are looking to dig out of your deck just as is to get into play. Like, example for myself, I play Maze's End. I'm a Gates player. We've talked about this before, right? This is a land that I could play that helps me tutor out. And I've also...
Maze's End.
We've stated this before, that generally speaking, abilities and such that come from lands are very, very hard to stop because people are either not playing very efficient land removal or your group has basically soft banned mass land destruction.
Yeah, and like no one's playing Stifle. Like you're not going to pop this thing off and then get like Shadow of Doubted. Like it's crazy.
I play Stifle.
Okay, if you're using your Stifle on a crop rotation, then I would love to play more games with you. Please and thank you.
I mean, would you stifle a crop rotation that's grabbing Valakut?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
You know what I mean? Would you stifle a crop rotation that's going to go get Gaia's Cradle?
Yes. All right, maybe you sold me here.
I'm telling you, seriously, a land tutoring ability like this here that goes and gets non-basics because it's so incredibly hard to stop this ability as is. This is something to seriously be watching out for, and especially if you are running this into a deck that could utilize grabbing this back out of the graveyard again. This is now a land. Yeah. This is a land that can now act as a repeatable land tutor to start setting up land combos, things like Valakut and Gaia's Cradle and Maze's End, Dark Depths. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Vesuva, Thespian Stage, Urborg, and Cabal Coffers, and Nykthos, and all that.
There's so many good lands that, oh my God, this is going to go in so many black decks that it's just going to go and find Cabal Coffers. Like, black decks haven't been able to do that. They've had to run the Expedition map, and now you can just cut that and add an extra land into your deck.
This will probably even be super dumb in a colorless deck that you can use this and go tutor out Eldrazi Temple or Eye of Ugin or Ugin's Labyrinth or Maze's End.
Yeah.
Or not Maze's End, Maze of Ith, excuse me, Maze of Ith.
Totally. Yeah, there's so much value for this that is just going to get broken.
I'm a big fan.
Love it. Well, this has been a fun little chat. I feel like this is a principle that I want to get into more of, just going through the set and reading through all of the cards and seeing which ones surprised me as I read through them a couple of times. So
how about was your since I know when we initially talked about this one before, this was the set that you were most excited for this year. Has it lived up to your expectations?
100%. Yeah, it's been such a sweet set. I've played a lot of limited of this already, and it's such a cool limited format. Getting access to all the fetches. I also play a ton of Brawl on Arena, which I guess we could do an episode about at some point, since Brawl is kind of becoming a bigger format.
Jared would like to take good headway on that. I know he plays a lot of Brawl.
So getting access to a bunch of really powerful cards to make Brawl closer to Commander is something that's been really exciting for me. So Modern Horizons 3 has exceeded my expectations, I would say.
Now, how about just as a funsies, because I know people love to talk about lists or whatever. Now that we've got 3 of these total, these Modern Horizons sets to talk about, where would you scale them as far as their...
I think that this one is the most balanced of them. I don't think there's anything like... I mean, we all remember Hogak, which was from the first Modern Horizons? Or was
the first one? Yep, yeah, correct.
The first
Modern Horizons 1.
They definitely took a bunch of risks, and a bunch of those cards got banned. So I think that Modern Horizons 1 was the most powerful of them. 2 was kind of forgettable. Like, I don't really remember much that happened in Modern Horizons 2. But this one... Oh, I guess Esper Sentinel came from Modern Horizons 2, right?
Esper Sentinel, Ragavan, the Evoke Elementals, Urza, I think. Or no, Urza was in the first one, right?
Yeah, these are all just really good sets. Like, I know whenever they put out like a Modern Horizons set, it's going to be very good. Now, what's interesting is the next set that's coming out is the Assassin's Creed one, which is kind of Modern Horizons as well, because it's another like
3.5.
Yeah, it's like injected straight into Modern, like the Lord of the Rings set was. This is Modern Horizons that's cosplaying as Assassin's Creed. So I'll be curious to see where that one leads us, if we'll have some other surprise heaters from there. But I think that brings us right to the end of today's episode, John.
I think it does. Yeah, I'm real excited to be able to get my hands on some of these cards. Again, there is a lot that we did not talk about here today because obviously a lot of them are just stand out, just like, wow, these are incredible picks, right? We didn't really talk about anything as far as like some of the new build around legendary creatures. There's tons of them to talk about. Especially those flip planeswalkers. Those I'm really interested to see who builds commander decks around those, like a Sorin, life gain, whatever, that just domes somebody equal to life. I'm real excited to see about that. But then just everything in this feels like, there's a little bit of something here for everybody. So
Absolutely.
I highly recommend checking out these cards that are available from this product and finding what suits you.
Definitely. Yeah. So to the listeners, if we missed anything, let us and the other listeners know in the comments down below. Like I said, we love responding to comments. So let us know what you thought of this episode, if we are wrong about one of our choices or if we should have talked about something else. And
like the energy cards.
On that note, we will see you next time on the MTG Thoughtcast. Thanks for watching.